I am Leo. I'm 32 years old, and last week my own mother texted me to tell me I was an orphan while I was still very much alive. Before I tell you how I legally dismantled their entire life and watched their precious luxury cars get towed away, let me know where you guys are watching from in the comments. I read every single one. The vibration of my phone against the plywood table was the only sound in the trailer. It was 11:42 p.m. I was still on the job site, going over the blueprints for a landscape renovation in archaic detail. That's what I do. I'm a landscape architect and a general contractor. I build things. I fix things. I make things beautiful for other people. I picked up the phone, expecting it to be a supplier delaying a lumber shipment. It wasn't. It was Susan. I don't call her mom anymore. Not after this. The message on the screen was bright enough to burn my retinas in the dim light of the trailer. We changed all the locks. From today, consider yourself an orphan. We don't have a son named Leo. Don't come back. I stared at the words. I didn't blink. I didn't gasp. I didn't throw the phone across the room. When you spend 30 years being treated like a utility rather than a human being, the final severance doesn't feel like a heartbreak. It feels like a confirmation. I put the phone down. I looked at my hands. They were covered in fine dust from the stone cutting earlier that day. My knuckles were swollen. There was a scar running down my left thumb from when I reshingled their roof 4 years ago. A roof that was now apparently protecting a house I was banned from entering. I stood up, grabbed my keys, and walked out to my truck. It's a 2018 Ford F-150, reliable, dented on the bumper, filled with tools. I drove. I didn't drive to beg. I drove to verify. The house is in a nice part of Portland. It's a colonial revival that I have personally renovated 3 times. I painted the siding. I installed the copper gutters. I laid the driveway pavers by hand. When I pulled up to the curb, the house was dark, but the driveway lights were on. And there it was, the reason for my eviction. Parked right in the spot where I usually leave my truck was a brand new Porsche 911 Carrera. Bright yellow. It screamed money. It screamed arrogance. It sat there shining under the floodlights like a trophy. That car belonged to Ethan, my younger brother, the golden child, the influencer. I got out of my truck. The night air was cold. I walked up the driveway, my boots crunching on the gravel I had laid down myself. I walked past the Porsche. It still had the temporary dealer tags on it. I touched the hood. It was cold. I went to the front door. My key was on my ring. I slid it into the lock. It didn't turn. They weren't bluffing. I stood there for a moment. I could hear faint music coming from inside. Probably the TV. They were in there, sitting on the heated floors I installed, watching a 90-inch TV I paid for, secure behind locks they bought to keep me out. I felt a vibration in my pocket again. Another text. This one from my father, Robert. Don't make a scene, Leo. Just go away. You're a grown man. Figure it out. We're done carrying you. Carrying me? The irony was so thick I could taste it like copper in my mouth. I had been paying the mortgage on this house since I was 22. I had paid for the remodel. I had paid for the property taxes for the last 3 years because Robert had a liquidity issue. I didn't knock. I didn't ring the doorbell. I took a step back, pulled out my phone, and took a picture of the Porsche. Then I took a picture of the new deadbolt. I walked back to my truck. I sat in the driver's seat and dialed a number. Leo? Sarah's voice was groggy. It's midnight. Sarah has been my best friend since high school. She's also the sharpest paralegal I know. They did it, I said. My voice was calm, unnaturally calm. They changed the locks, and Mom called me an orphan. There was silence on the other end. Then the sound of rustling sheets. Sarah was sitting up. She actually used the word? In writing. I have the text. Okay, Sarah said. Her voice shifted. She wasn't my friend anymore. She was a shark smelling blood in the water. Do you have the box? The box is in my storage unit, I said. Go get it. Meet me at the diner on 4th in 30 minutes. Bring everything. Every receipt. Every bank statement. Every text message from the last 10 years. Sarah, I said. looking at the yellow Porsche one last time. "I don't just want the money back." "I know," she said. "You want them to hurt." "No," I corrected her. "I want justice. And in this country, justice costs money." I started the engine. As I pulled away, I saw the curtains in the living room twitch. Someone was watching, probably hoping I was crying in my car. They had no idea. They hadn't created a victim. They had just released a creditor. I drove to the storage facility where I keep my heavy equipment. In the back, inside a fireproof safe, was a metal box. I labeled it the family fund years ago as a joke. Now it was evidence. I opened it. The smell of old paper wafted out. Inside were 3 notebooks and a stack of manila envelopes. This wasn't just receipts. This was a diary of exploitation. See, I'm meticulous. Comes with the job. You can't build a retaining wall without precise measurements. And you can't survive in my family without keeping score, because they will gaslight you until you question your own sanity. I picked up the black notebook on top. It was from 12 years ago. Entry 1, August 12th. Dad asked for $400 for electricity bill. Said he'd pay back next Friday. Status: unpaid. Entry 200, March 4th. Mom needed $5,000 for emergency dental work. Saw her with new veneers and a Louis Vuitton bag the next week. Status: unpaid. I flipped through the pages. The numbers got bigger. The loans became investments. The help became obligations. I grabbed the box and headed to the diner. When I walked in, Sarah was already there with a laptop and a large coffee. She looked at me, scanned my face for tears, saw none, and nodded. "Let's see the damage," she said. I slammed the box onto the table. It was heavy. "They told me to be a man," I said, sliding into the booth. "They told me to grow up. So I'm going to do exactly what a grown man does when someone breaches a contract." "We're going to sue them?" Sarah asked, opening the first envelope. "No," I said, pulling out the photo of the yellow Porsche. "We're going to foreclose on them. But before I tell you about the lawsuit, you need to understand why that word, orphan, was the trigger that destroyed my family. You need to see the history, because this didn't start with a text message. It started 15 years ago with a broken plate and a lie. The word orphan wasn't a random insult my mother threw out in a moment of anger. It was a weapon she had been sharpening since I was 16 years old. I remember the day vividly. It was a Tuesday. I was a junior in high school. I had just come home from football practice, exhausted, muddy, and starving. My brother, Ethan, was 10 at the time. He was sitting at the kitchen counter eating ice cream. I went to grab a plate from the cabinet to reheat some leftovers. My hands were slippery from sweat and the rain outside. The plate slipped. It crashed onto the tile floor and shattered into a dozen pieces. It was a standard white dinner plate. Value maybe $3. My mother, Susan, stormed into the kitchen like a hurricane. She looked at the shards, then she looked at me. Her face didn't just show annoyance. It showed pure, unadulterated disgust. "You clumsy ox," she hissed. "You ruin everything you touch." "It was an accident, Mom," I said, bending down to pick up the pieces. "Don't call me that," she snapped. She grabbed my wrist, her nails digging into my skin. "Sometimes I look at you and I wonder how you came from me. Ethan is graceful. Ethan is special. You're just heavy." She pulled her hand back as if touching me had dirted her. "I should have left you at the fire station," she said, her voice dropping to a cold whisper. "I should have let you be an orphan. At least then the state would pay for your mistakes." I froze. I was 16. I was 6 feet 2 inches, 200 pounds of muscle, but in that moment, I felt like I was 3 inches tall. Ethan giggled. He sat there, licking his spoon, watching me get destroyed. He learned a lesson that day. Leo is the scapegoat. Ethan is the prince. That dynamic never changed. In fact, it solidified into concrete. By the time I was 18, I was working weekends at a construction site to pay for my own clothes and school supplies. My parents told me it was to build character. "We're not raising a freeloader," my father, Robert, would say, sipping scotch that cost more than my weekly earnings. You want new sneakers? Earn them. I believed him. I thought this was normal. I thought this was how men were made. Meanwhile, Ethan got a brand new car for his 16th birthday. A BMW, not a beater to learn on. A brand new 3 Series. Why does he get a car? I asked stupidly when I saw it in the driveway. Ethan is sensitive, my mother said, stroking the leather seats. He can't take the bus, Leo. It gives him anxiety. You're strong. You can walk or buy your own truck. So I did. I bought a rusted-out Chevy for $800 and fixed the engine myself. I skipped my senior prom to work a double shift because my dad said they were a little short on the mortgage that month. I handed over $400. They took it without a thank you. Fast forward to my 20s. I didn't go to college. I went straight into the trades. I had a knack for it. I understood structures. I understood drainage. I understood hard work. By 24, I had my own crew. By 26, I was making 6 figures. But I never saw that money, because every time I got a check, there was a crisis at the Vance household. Leo, the roof is leaking. Leo, your father's investments took a hit. Leo, Ethan needs tuition for that private art college. I paid. I always paid. Why? Because I was chasing the one thing they withheld. Approval. I thought if I paid enough, if I fixed enough, eventually they would look at me the way they looked at Ethan. I was wrong. The financial abuse wasn't subtle. It was systemic. When I was 28, the big conversation happened. The one that sealed my fate. My business was booming. I was looking at buying a condo downtown. I told my parents over dinner. Robert put down his fork. He looked serious. Leo, don't throw your money away on rent or a condo fee. That's foolish. I need my own place, Dad. I said. This is your place? Susan said, reaching across the table to touch my hand, a rare gesture of affection. Listen, your father and I, we're getting older. This house is too big for us to manage alone. But it's our legacy. We want you to invest here. Invest how? Pay off the mortgage, Robert said. Handle the renovations. Increase the value. When we sell it or when we pass on, the house is yours. Ethan has his trust fund, which I was also contributing to, unknowingly. This house. This is your inheritance. I want you to have a home, Leo, Mom said softly. You've earned it. I fell for it. Hook, line, and sinker. I moved into the basement suite. I treated the house like my own asset. I spent $12,000 on a new roof. I spent $25,000 strictly on materials to redo the kitchen and 3 bathrooms. My labor, that was sweat equity. If I charged a client, it would have been another $60,000. I paid the $2,800 mortgage every single month for 4 years. I wasn't a tenant. I was an investor. But while I was sweating on the roof in July, scraping off old tar, I would look down and see Ethan in the backyard, lounging by the pool I cleaned. Ethan didn't work. He was an entrepreneur, which meant he bought cryptocurrency with Dad's money and posted lifestyle photos on Instagram. One vivid memory stands out. 2 years ago, I was eating a sandwich in my truck, covered in drywall dust. I opened Instagram. There was a photo of Ethan. He was in Miami. He was leaning against a lime green Lamborghini Huracan. The caption read, "Grind never stops. Thanks specifically to the investors who believe in the vision." He tagged my parents. I knew who paid for that trip. I had just given my dad $5,000 for property taxes. I called my dad. "Did you pay for Ethan's trip?" "It's a networking event, Leo," Dad said, dismissive. "He's making connections. You wouldn't understand. You work with your hands. Ethan works with his image. It's different capital. I paid for the taxes, Dad. Not for a Lembo rental. Stop counting pennies, Leo. It's unbecoming. We're a family. We help each other. Help each other." That was the lie. It wasn't a circle of help. It was a funnel. And I was at the top, pouring everything in while they stood at the bottom with buckets. But I kept doing it. Until the day I came home early. Until the day the illusion finally shattered. That brings us to the moment everything changed. The moment I realized I wasn't a son. I was just an employee they intended to fire. It was a Tuesday, just like the day I broke the plate 15 years ago. Funny how tragedy likes to keep a schedule. I was working on a job site about 20 minutes from the house. A big terracing project. Around noon, my heavy-duty concrete saw jammed. I needed the backup gear I had left in the garage at home. I didn't call ahead. Why would I? It was my home. I pulled up. The driveway was empty. Dad was at the country club, golfing on my dime, and I assumed Mom was out shopping. Ethan usually didn't wake up until 2 p.m. I let myself in through the side door that led into the kitchen. I was wearing my soft-soled work boots, so I didn't make a sound. As I reached for the garage key on the rack, I heard voices. They were coming from the sunroom. It was my mother and Ethan. "I don't know, Mom," Ethan was saying. He sounded whiny. "The yellow is cool, but a Porsche? Everyone has a Porsche. I really wanted the Ferrari Roma. It fits my brand better." I froze. My hand hovered over the keys. "Ethan, honey, be reasonable." My mother's voice was soothing, the tone she never used with me. "The Porsche 911 is a fantastic car. It's nearly $140,000. We're stretching as it is." "But you said when we sell the house we'd have millions," Ethan argued. "Why do I have to settle now?" My heart stopped. "When we sell the house, we have to wait until the market peaks in the spring," Mom explained. "And we have to get the exterior painting done. Leo is starting that next week." "Does Leo know?" Ethan asked. Then he laughed. A cruel, snorting sound. "Does he know he's painting the house just so we can sell it out from under him?" I leaned against the refrigerator. The cold metal pressed against my cheek. I felt like I was going to throw up. "Of course not," Mom said. "If he knew, he'd stop paying the mortgage. We need him to cover the costs until closing. He's useful. Useful. Not loved. Not cherished. Useful. Like a hammer. Like a shovel." "But what if he asks for a cut?" Ethan asked. "He put a lot of money into this place, Mom. The roof, the kitchen." "He has no paperwork, Ethan," Mom said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "The deed is in our names only. Dad and I checked with Jenkins. Since Leo never asked for a formal lease or a loan agreement, everything he put in is considered a gift in the eyes of the law, a contribution to the household." "So he gets nothing?" Ethan sounded delighted. "He gets the satisfaction of having helped his family," Mom chuckled. "Besides, he has his little construction business. He's accustomed to living like a worker. You, my darling, you need a cushion. You need the capital to launch your lifestyle brand. That's what the house money is for. It's your legacy." "Upgrade the Porsche to the Ferrari when the check clears?" Ethan asked. "Promise," Mom said. I didn't storm in. I wanted to. I wanted to kick the door down and scream. I wanted to grab Ethan by his designer collar and throw him into the pool. But something cold settled in my chest. A clarity I had never felt before. If I walked in there now, I would just be the crazy, violent son. They would gaslight me. They would deny it. They would kick me out right then and there, and I would lose my leverage. I needed to be smarter. I needed to be the man they always told me to be. I backed out of the kitchen. I went back to my truck. I didn't get the saw. I drove to a parking lot 3 blocks away and sat there for an hour, staring at the steering wheel. "Okay," I whispered to myself. "You want a worker? You got a worker." I went back to the house an hour later, making sure to slam the truck door loudly. I walked in whistling. "Hey, Mom." "Hey, Ethan," I called out. They were in the kitchen now. Mom looked a little jumped. "Oh, Leo, you're home early. Just grabbing some tools," I said. I looked at Ethan. "Nice shirt." "Thanks," he muttered, not looking up from his phone. "Mom, I was thinking," I said, opening the fridge to grab a water. "That exterior paint job. I can start it next week. But I need to order the high-end weather-resistant stuff. It's expensive." "How expensive?" Mom asked, her eyes narrowing. "About $4,000 for materials," I lied. It was closer to 2. "But it'll add $20,000 to the curb appeal." Her eyes lit up. Do it. Use your card, we'll settle up later. Actually, I said, casually leaning against the counter. My accountant is on my back about mixing personal and business expenses. Since I'm doing the labor for free, could you guys sign a little work order verification? Just so I can write off the materials as a business loss? It doesn't cost you anything. It just proves I did the work here. Mom looked at Ethan, then back at me. She saw the dumb, helpful ox. She didn't see the wolf. Sure, Leo, she said. Whatever helps your taxes. That night, I drafted a document. It wasn't just a work order. It was an acknowledgement of debt and capital improvement. It listed the value of the labor and the materials. It stated clearly that these were loans to the homeowners, to be repaid upon sale or transfer of title. I buried that clause in a paragraph about liability waivers and insurance standards. The next morning, I put it in front of my dad while he was watching Fox News and drinking coffee. Just standard paperwork for the insurance, Dad, I said. For the painting. He didn't even read it. He just wanted me out of his face so he could watch the market report. He scribbled his signature. Robert Vance. I took that paper, walked to my room, scanned it, emailed it to a secure server, and then put the original in my fireproof box. That was the first nail in their coffin. For the next 2 weeks, I lived with the enemy. I ate dinner with them. I listened to them talk about their future plans, which mysteriously didn't include me. I started digging. I went through the home office when they were out. I found bank statements. I found the emails with the real estate agent. They were listing the house for $1.2 million. And then I found something else. A folder labeled Ethan Trust. I took photos of everything. The tension broke 3 days ago. Dad came to me. Leo, we booked a cruise for the family for Christmas. The Mediterranean. Nice, I said. Am I invited? Well, that's the thing, he said, avoiding eye contact. Tickets are expensive, and someone needs to watch the house. We thought, since you're working anyway, you could stay back. So you want me to house sit while you take Ethan to Europe? It's not like that, he snapped. By the way, we need $5,000 for the deposit. Transfer it to Mom's account tonight. That was it. The breaking point. No, I said. He looked at me like I had spoken in a foreign language. Excuse me? No, I'm not giving you $5,000. I have bills. His face turned red. You ungrateful little. You live under my roof. And I pay for the roof. I yelled back. I'm done, Dad. No more money. Not a dime. He stormed out. We'll see about that. I left for work. 2 days later, the text came. The Orphan text. They thought locking me out was the punishment. They thought cutting me off would make me crawl back, begging to pay their bills just to have a place to sleep. They didn't know I had the signed acknowledgement. They didn't know I had the receipts. And they certainly didn't know I had Sarah. The morning after the lockout, I met Evelyn Sterling. Sarah had set it up. Evelyn is a legend in family law. She's a woman in her 60s who wears pearls and destroys egos for a living. She usually charges $600 an hour, but Sarah called in a favor. We met in her glass-walled conference room. I felt out of place in my flannel shirt and work boots, sitting on a Herman Miller chair. So, Evelyn said, adjusting her glasses, your parents evicted you. It's their house. They have the right. It's not just an eviction, I said. I pushed my pile of evidence across the polished mahogany table. It's a theft. Evelyn picked up the acknowledgement of debt document, the one I tricked my dad into signing. Her eyebrows shot up. Smart, she murmured. Very smart. He acknowledges the value of the labor is $85,000 for the last 3 years alone. He didn't read it, I said. That's not my problem. His signature is here. She flipped to the next page. The spreadsheet of mortgage payments. You paid the mortgage directly? Direct transfer from my bank to the lender, I said. For 48 months. Evelyn smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was a predatory smile. Leo, she said, this isn't a landlord-tenant dispute. This is a constructive trust case. by contributing to the mortgage and the capital improvements with the promise, even implied, of ownership, you have created an equitable interest in the property. Can we get the money back? I asked. We can do better, she said. We can put a lease pendens on the house. That means they can't sell it. They can't refinance it. They can't do anything until they settle with you. Do it, I said. There's more, I added. I pulled out my phone and played the recording of the conversation about the Ferrari. The audio was clear. Mom. The deed is in our names only. Leo doesn't realize all his help was voluntary. Upgrade the Porsche to the Ferrari. Evelyn's face hardened. She took off her glasses. They called you an orphan? She asked, referencing the text message I showed her earlier. Yes. And then they planned to use your labor to buy a Ferrari for your brother? Yes. Evelyn closed the folder. I hate bullies, Leo. And I really hate parents who eat their young. I'm taking the case. And I'm going to sue them for unjust enrichment, fraud, and breach of contract. The next 48 hours were a blur of paperwork. We filed the lawsuit. We filed the lien on the house. I stayed in a cheap motel. I didn't sleep much. I kept checking the security cameras I had installed at the house. I still had access to the app on my phone. They hadn't changed the Wi-Fi password yet. Geniuses. I saw Ethan waxing his Porsche in the driveway. I saw my dad pacing in the living room. Then the process server arrived. I watched it live on my phone. A guy in a plain sedan pulled up. He walked to the door. Dad answered. The guy handed him a thick stack of papers. Dad looked confused, then angry. He threw the papers on the ground. The server just walked away. 10 minutes later, my phone blew up. Dad calling. Mom calling. Ethan calling. I let it ring. Then came the voicemail from their lawyer, Mr. Jenkins. He was the family lawyer, a guy who mostly did estate planning. He wasn't a litigator. Leo, this is Jenkins. Your father is very upset. This lawsuit is ridiculous. It's frivolous. You're suing your own parents? We need to meet immediately to stop this nonsense before we countersue you for emotional distress and back rent. Back rent. That was their angle. I called Evelyn. They want to meet. Good, she said. We'll meet, but not at their house. At my office. And tell them to bring their checkbook. The mediation was set for Friday. In the days leading up to it, the reality of what I was doing hit me. I was nuking my family. There was no going back after this. No Thanksgiving dinners. No Christmas. But then I remembered the text. Consider yourself an orphan. They had already nuked the family. I was just walking through the radiation. On Thursday night, I received a text from Ethan. Bro, WTF? Mom is crying. Dad is freaking out. You're ruining everything. Just drop it and apologize, and maybe they'll let you move back in the basement. The basement. Not a room. The basement. I replied, I don't want the basement, Ethan. I want half. He didn't reply. Friday morning arrived. I put on my best suit, the one I bought for funerals. It felt appropriate. I was going to bury a relationship. I drove to Evelyn's office. I saw the yellow Porsche in the parking lot. They were here. I took a deep breath. Showtime, I whispered. I didn't know it yet, but the biggest twist wasn't even the lawsuit. It was what we were about to find out about their finances during the mediation. The Porsche wasn't just a car. It was the smoking gun. The conference room at Evelyn's firm was designed to intimidate. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, massive abstract art on the walls, and air conditioning set just a few degrees too cold. When I walked in, my family was already seated on one side of the long table. Robert, my father, refused to look at me. His jaw was tight, his face a blotchy red. Susan, my mother, was dabbing her eyes with a tissue, playing the victim perfectly. She looked at me with a mix of sorrow and accusation, as if I were the one who had changed the locks. Ethan was leaning back in his chair, scrolling on his phone, looking bored. He wore a designer hoodie that cost more than my first car. Their lawyer, Jenkins, looked nervous. He was out of his depth with Evelyn Sterling. Let's make this quick, Jenkins said, shuffling his papers. My clients are heartbroken. They want to reconcile with their son. But this lawsuit is an insult. Leo, if you drop this lien immediately, your parents are willing to forgive your outburst. They might even let you come over for dinner on Sundays. Evelyn didn't even look up from her notes. She just laughed. A dry, sharp sound. Mr. Jenkins, Evelyn said, you seem to be under the impression that we are here to beg. We are here to collect. Collect. Dad slammed his hand on the table. He lived in my house. He ate my food. If anything, he owes us back rent for 10 years. Market rate is $1,500 a month. That's $180,000 he owes us. Actually, Evelyn said, sliding a document across the table. According to the receipts, Leo contributed an average of $3,200 a month in mortgage payments, utilities, and grocery bills, plus the labor. We have the signed acknowledgement from you, Robert. You verified the capital improvements. Dad stared at the paper he had signed without reading. He turned pale. That was for taxes, he stammered. Exactly, Evelyn said. It's a legal document. Unless you're admitting to tax fraud. Dad shut his mouth. Here is the settlement offer, Evelyn continued. Leo wants 50% of the current market value of the home. The house is appraised at $1.2 million. That's $600,000. Plus legal fees. You're insane, Mom shrieked, dropping the act. That's our retirement. That's Ethan's. That's our money. Ethan's what? I spoke for the first time. Ethan's Ferrari fund? Ethan looked up, eyes wide. We have the recording, Susan, I said, looking her dead in the eye. I heard you. Leo is the worker. Ethan gets the legacy. I heard it all. The room went silent. Mom looked like she had been slapped. It doesn't matter, Jenkins tried to intervene. Even if he contributed, the deed is in their name. You can't force a sale. We can, Evelyn said. And we will. Unless. She paused. She pulled out a new file. This was the one I hadn't seen yet. Her private investigator had delivered it that morning. Unless we discuss the second mortgage, Evelyn said. The color drained from my parents' faces completely. Even Ethan looked confused. What second mortgage? Ethan asked. Your parents, Evelyn explained, addressing Ethan, took out a massive home equity line of credit against the house 6 months ago, $200,000. Do you know where that money went? Ethan shook his head. It went to the Porsche dealership, Evelyn said, and to cover the losses on your father's crypto trading account. I stared at my dad. He had mortgaged the house I was paying for, to buy that yellow car and gamble on Bitcoin. The house isn't fully paid off, Evelyn revealed. In fact, with the new loan, they have very little equity left. If we force a sale, the bank gets paid first. Then Leo gets his judgment. And you too, she pointed at my parents. You will walk away with almost nothing. You lied to me? Ethan stood up, looking at Dad. You said the Porsche was a gift from the trust fund. There is no trust fund, you idiot, Dad yelled, finally snapping. The market crashed. I lost it all. I was trying to make it back by selling the house. The chaos that erupted was beautiful. Ethan screaming at Dad. Mom sobbing uncontrollably. Jenkins trying to calm everyone down. I sat there perfectly still. So, I said, cutting through the noise. They all stopped and looked at me. You're broke, I said. You were going to sell the house, take the money, and leave me with nothing. You were going to ghost me. Leo, please, Mom wailed. She reached across the table, trying to grab my hand. We're family. We made mistakes. But don't destroy us. If you force the sale now, we'll be homeless. We have nowhere to go. Please, help us. It was the moment of truth. The moment every victim dreams of. They were on their knees. I could save them. I could drop the lawsuit, help them refinance, work harder, fix this mess like I always did. I looked at the text message printed out in Evelyn's evidence binder. From today, consider yourself an orphan. I looked at my mother. You said I was an orphan, Mom. I didn't mean it. she cried. I was angry. I stood up. I buttoned my suit jacket. You were right, I said. My voice was a whisper, but it echoed in the room. I am an orphan, and orphans don't have parents to save. I turned to Evelyn. Proceed with the sale. I want my money. Leo, Dad shouted as I walked toward the door. You walk out that door, you're dead to us. I stopped. I didn't turn around. I was dead to you the moment I stopped being profitable, I said. I walked out. I walked past the yellow Porsche in the parking lot. It looked like garbage to me now. Just a hunk of metal that cost a family its soul. I got into my truck. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from adrenaline. I felt light. For the first time in 30 years, the weight was gone. But the story doesn't end there. Because when you fight a war, there are casualties. And the fallout of that meeting was faster and more brutal than anyone expected. Walking out of that conference room wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of their end. In movies, when the hero wins, the screen fades to black and everyone goes home happy. In real life, especially in a legal battle involving family, the victory is a slow, grinding process. It's not an explosion. It's a suffocation. The 30 days following the mediation were the longest of my life. The judge had signed the order. The house was to be sold immediately. The proceeds would be held in escrow until the division of assets was finalized. I moved into a small rental apartment near my job site, but I couldn't completely cut ties yet. I still had thousands of dollars worth of tools and heavy equipment stored in the garage at the family home. And legally, I was allowed to retrieve them. 2 weeks after the mediation, I drove back to the house. I brought a friend, Mike, with me, not just for help lifting, but as a witness. I didn't trust them not to accuse me of stealing my own drill. When we pulled up, the first thing I saw was the for sale sign on the lawn. It wasn't a standard sign. It had a pending sticker slapped across it. The market was hot, and a vulture investor had snapped it up for cash, knowing they were desperate to sell. But the second thing I saw was the silence. Usually the house was buzzing. Ethan blasting music, the TV on, the sprinkler system running. Now, it looked abandoned. The grass was overgrown. I wasn't there to cut it anymore, and clearly, neither Ethan nor Dad had lifted a finger. I parked the truck and got out. Mrs. Higgins, the neighbor across the street, the one who had kept the logbook that saved my life, was sitting on her porch. She raised her coffee mug to me in a silent salute. I nodded back. Allies in the trenches. I unlocked the garage door. My key still worked there. The garage was a mess. But it wasn't construction mess. It was panic mess. Boxes piled haphazardly. Clothes thrown into garbage bags. It smelled of stale fear. Jesus, Mike whispered. Looks like they're fleeing a crime scene. They are, I said. They're fleeing reality. As we started loading my table saw onto the truck, the door to the house opened. It was Ethan. I almost didn't recognize him. The golden boy, the influencer, looked like he hadn't showered in 3 days. He was wearing sweatpants and a stained t-shirt. His hair, usually perfectly styled, was greasy. He stood in the doorway watching me. He didn't have that arrogant smirk anymore. He looked shrunken. You happy? He asked. His voice cracked. I didn't stop loading the truck. Happiness has nothing to do with it, Ethan. It's business. They took the Porsche, he said. He sounded like a child who had dropped his ice cream. Yesterday, a tow truck came. All the neighbors watched. I paused. This was a detail I needed to hear. The bank took it? Dad stopped paying the note. Ethan spat, his anger suddenly shifting from me to our father. He told me the trust fund would cover it. He lied, Leo. He lied about everything. There is no money. There never was. It was all just you. It was your money. I looked at my brother. For the first time, I saw him not as a villain, but as another victim. A victim of his own entitlement, sure, but also a victim of our parents' delusion. They had crippled him. They had taught him that the world owed him a living. And now that the world was collecting its debts, he didn't know how to survive. I know, I said. I tried to tell you. I have to move into an apartment with them, Ethan said, looking horrified. A two-bedroom. I have to share a bathroom with Dad. Do you know how humiliating that is? Welcome to the real world, I said coldly. I lived in a basement for 4 years, remember? Can I? He hesitated. He looked at his feet. Can I come stay with you? Just for a bit? Until I get my brand deals sorted. I looked at him. I really looked at him. If I said yes, the cycle would start again. I would be the provider. He would be the leech. And our parents would eventually worm their way back in through him. No, I said. But I'm your brother. You're an orphan. I corrected him. Remember? That's what the text said. Orphans don't have brothers. I slammed the tailgate of the truck. Let's go, Mike. As we drove away, I saw Ethan kick a box of his own belongings. It tumbled over, spilling designer sneakers onto the dirty garage floor. The closing day came a week later. I didn't have to be in the same room as them. Evelyn handled everything. But she called me immediately after the checks were cut. Do you want the numbers? She asked. Give it to me, I said. I was sitting in my truck, parked by the river. Final sale price, $1,150,000. Evelyn read. After paying off the first mortgage, the disastrous second mortgage, the realtor fees, the closing costs, and the lien for the unpaid property taxes. She paused for effect. The net proceeds were $460,000. Okay, I said. And the split. The judge awarded you your full claim plus interest, Evelyn said. You are getting a check for $285,000. That covers your capital contributions, your legal fees, and your share of the equity. And them? I asked. They get the remainder, $175,000. That's not nothing, I said, feeling a twinge of disappointment. It wasn't total ruin. Wait, Evelyn said. I'm not done. Jenkins, their lawyer? He filed a lien against their share for his unpaid legal fees. He took $25,000 off the top. And the IRS has a hold on your father's share for unpaid capital gains from 3 years ago. Another $40,000. I did the math in my head. $175,000 minus $65,000. They are walking away with $110,000, Evelyn said. Total. For 3 people. To restart their lives in this economy. They can't buy a house with that, I said. They can't even buy a decent condo with that, Evelyn confirmed. They are renters now, Leo. Probably for the rest of their lives. I hung up the phone. I sat there for a long time. $110,000. It sounds like a lot of money to some people. But for Robert and Susan Vance, who burned through $10,000 a month just to maintain their image, that money would be gone in 2 years. I felt a vibration in my pocket. It was a notification from my bank app. Deposit received, $285,000. I stared at the number. It wasn't lottery money. It was my money. Every dollar represented a shingle I laid, a wall I painted, a weekend I sacrificed. It was my life returned to me in digital form. But the final blow, the emotional fallout, happened 2 days later. I was at the grocery store buying steak, ribeye, because I could. My phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. I answered it. Leo? It was Mom. She must have borrowed a phone. Her number was blocked. What do you want, Susan? I asked. I didn't leave the store. I stood there in the meat aisle. We're moving today, she said. Her voice was small, trembling. The movers. They're so expensive. And the new apartment. It's so dark, Leo. It smells like smoke. That sounds like a problem, I said. Your father is... He's broken, she continued, her voice hitching. He just sits in the chair and stares at the wall. He won't talk. And Ethan hates us. He screams at us every night. She was painting a picture of hell. A hell they built brick by brick. Why are you telling me this? I asked. I found something, she said. While we were packing, I found your old photo album. The one from when you were a baby. You were so cute, Leo. You used to hold my finger so tight. It was a trap. The oldest trap in the book. Nostalgia weaponized to induce guilt. I was looking at the photos, she sobbed, and I realized we made a mistake. We shouldn't have sent that text. We were just stressed. Please, Leo, can't we just meet for coffee? Just 5 minutes? We're a family. My hand tightened around the package of steak. I felt the cold plastic. I closed my eyes and I saw the yellow Porsche. I saw the look on her face when she told Ethan she wished I was an orphan. I saw the years of neglect. Susan, I said, do you remember when I was 16? When I broke the plate? What? She sounded confused. The plate? That was years ago. You told me you wished you had left me at the fire station, I said. You wished I was an orphan. I didn't mean it. Yes, you did, I said. And you got your wish. You don't have a son named Leo anymore. He died the day you changed the locks. Leo, please. We have no one else. You have each other, I said. And you have $110,000. I suggest you budget carefully. I hung up. Then I blocked the number. I stood there in the grocery store, surrounded by strangers. My heart was pounding. My hands were shaking. But it wasn't grief. It was the feeling of a heavy backpack being dropped after a 10-mile hike. My shoulders felt light. My spine felt straight. I paid for my steak. I walked out to my truck. I drove past the old neighborhood one last time on my way to my new land. I saw the moving truck pulling away from the house. It was a budget rental truck, not a professional moving company. I saw my father trying to lift a sofa into the back, struggling, his back bent. Ethan was standing on the sidewalk, on his phone, not helping. I slowed down for a second. A part of me, the old Leo, the people-pleaser, wanted to pull over, wanted to jump out and help him lift that sofa. But then I looked at the sold sign. I pressed the gas pedal. The engine of my truck roared. I didn't look back in the rearview mirror. The fallout was over. The dust had settled. And for the first time in my life, the road ahead was completely clear. 1 year. It has been exactly 365 days since the judge banged that gavel and legally severed me from the people who gave me life. A lot can happen in a year. You can lose a family. You can lose a home. But if you keep your head down and your hands moving, you can build something entirely new. Something that nobody can take away from you because your name is the only one on the deed. I want to take you to where I am right now. I'm not in a basement. I'm not fixing a leaky roof for a thankless landlord. I'm standing on the deck of a house that smells like raw cedar and fresh paint. It's a cabin. But cabin feels too small a word. It's a modern, A-frame structure with floor-to-ceiling glass looking out over a creek that cuts through my 5 acres. I designed every angle. I poured the foundation. I milled the timber from trees I cleared myself. When I wake up in the morning, I don't hear my mother screaming about a stain on the carpet. I hear the water running over the rocks. I hear the wind in the Douglas firs. And most importantly, I hear silence. The kind of silence that doesn't feel empty, it feels full. Feels like peace. I used the $285,000 wisely. I didn't blow it on a depreciating asset like a sports car. I bought this land for cash. I built the house with my own crew, calling in favors from electricians and plumbers I've worked with for a decade. They showed up for me because I pay them on time and I treat them with respect. 2 things my father never understood. My business has doubled in size. It turns out, when you aren't funneling 40% of your income into a black hole of parental debt, you can actually invest in better equipment. I bought a new excavator. I hired 2 more guys. I landed a contract with the city to redesign the downtown park. But the biggest change isn't the house. It's the people inside it. Maya walked into the kitchen as I was brewing coffee this morning. She's a landscape architect I met on a commercial job 6 months ago. She saw me arguing with a supplier who was trying to overcharge us for granite. And she later told me she had never seen someone handle a conflict so firmly without raising their voice. "You're thinking about them again," she said, handing me a mug. She knows the story. She's seen the court documents. "Just reflecting," I said. "It's the anniversary." "You won, Leo," she said, leaning her head on my shoulder. "Look around. You won." She's right. But winning a war doesn't mean you don't think about the battlefield. I hadn't seen or spoken to my parents since the grocery store call. I kept them blocked. I kept my address unlisted. But in a town like Portland, you can't hide forever. And sometimes the universe forces you to see the wreckage you left behind just to remind you why you walked away. It happened last Tuesday. I needed a specific heavy-duty hinge for the front gate I was welding. My usual supplier was out of stock, so I had to drive to the big box hardware store on the other side of town, the one near the cheap apartment complex where Aunt Karen told me my parents were living. I pulled into the parking lot. I didn't see the yellow Porsche. I saw rusted sedans and family minivans. I walked toward the automatic doors, and there he was, my father, Robert Vance, the man who used to wear Italian loafers and sip single malt scotch while lecturing me on executive presence. The man who told me that manual labor was for people who weren't smart enough to use their brains. He was wearing an orange vest over a shirt that was slightly too big for him. He looked thinner. His hair, usually dyed a rich brown, was completely gray. He was standing by the shopping carts, wiping the handles with a disinfectant rag. He was the greeter. I stopped about 20 feet away. My boots felt heavy on the pavement. I watched him. A young couple walked in. "Welcome to Home Depot," my father said. His voice was forced, a hollow imitation of his old charm. "Can I help you find anything today?" The couple barely looked at him. "Garden center," the guy mumbled, walking right past him without breaking stride. My father's face fell. He looked tired. He looked defeated. He looked like a man who was serving a life sentence in purgatory. Then he looked up, and he saw me. The rag stopped moving in his hand. We locked eyes. For a second, I thought he was going to yell. I thought he was going to storm over and demand I fix this, demand I write a check, demand I be his son again. But he didn't. He just stood there, clutching that wet rag like a lifeline. Shame washed over his face. It was a physical thing. I saw his shoulders slump, his head duck slightly. He was ashamed that I, the worker, was seeing him doing the work. I had a choice. I could turn around and leave. I could walk up and mock him. I could throw a $20 bill at his feet. Instead, I walked forward. I grabbed a cart. "Hello, Robert," I said. He flinched at his first name. "Leo," he whispered. He looked around nervously to see if his manager was watching. You look good." "I am good," I said. "I heard you're building a place," he said. "Karen told your mother." "It's finished," I said. That's good." He looked at my boots. "Expensive boots. They last longer," I said. There was a silence between us that was louder than the store announcements. "We're having a hard time, Leo," he said suddenly, his voice dropping to a hiss. "Your mother, she's not handling the apartment well. The neighbors are noisy. And the money, it's going so fast. The rent is robbery." "I'm here to buy hinges, Robert," I said calmly. "Ethan left us," he blurted out. This stopped me. "What?" "2 months ago," Robert said, his eyes watering. "He met some girl online. Said she lives in Los Angeles. He took the car, the Honda we bought with the last of the settlement money, and he just drove off. He stole your mother's jewelry, Leo. He emptied the emergency cash jar." I almost laughed. I didn't want to, but the predictability of it was absurd. "I warned you," I said. "I told you he was a parasite. You fed him until he got big enough to eat you." "He's your brother," Robert pleaded. "If you could just call him? Maybe send him some money to get him settled so he doesn't sell the car? We need that car, Leo. I have to take the bus to work. I'm 61 years old." I looked at this man who mortgaged my future to buy a Porsche. This man who stood by while my mother called me an orphan. He was still doing it. He was still asking me to fix Ethan's mess. He was still asking me to be the safety net for the golden child. "I can't help you," I said. "You have money," he snapped, a flash of the old anger returning. "You took half our house. You have a business. You owe us." People were starting to look. A manager was glancing over from the service desk. "I don't owe you a thing," I said, my voice steady and cold. "I paid my debt. I paid it with 15 years of labor. I paid it with the childhood you stole. The transaction is closed. Leo, please. He crumbled again. I'm begging you. Just a few thousand. For a used car. I can't take the bus. I pushed the cart forward, moving past him. Then walk, I said. It builds character. That's what you always told me. I walked into the store. I bought my hinges. I walked out. I didn't look at him again. But as I drove away, I realized something profound. I didn't feel hate anymore. I didn't feel the need for revenge. I felt pity. They were stuck in a prison of their own making. They were still obsessed with appearances, still enabling Ethan, still looking for a bailout. They hadn't learned a single thing. That evening, I sat by the fire with Maya. I told her about Ethan stealing the jewelry and the car. Are you surprised? She asked. No, I said. I'm just glad it wasn't my jewelry. And your parents? She asked. How do you feel about them being broke? I watched the flames dance in the fireplace. I feel like justice was served, I said. Not by me, but by life. They invested everything in the wrong son. They bet on the show pony and sent the workhorse to the glue factory. Now they have to pull the plow themselves. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from LinkedIn. Ethan Vance has viewed your profile. I clicked on it. His profile picture was him in sunglasses, standing in front of a palm tree. His bio read, Lifestyle entrepreneur, West Coast vibes, crypto enthusiast. I scrolled down. His latest post was from 2 days ago. It was a picture of him holding a stack of cash, probably the money from pawn jewelry. The caption read, Made it to LA. Big things coming. Cut off the toxicity to chase the dream. He was calling them toxic. The irony was perfect. I blocked him on LinkedIn. I put the phone down. I looked at Maya. I looked at the sturdy beams of my house. I'm ready, I said. Ready for what? To change the locks, I said, smiling. Metaphorically, I'm done with the past. I'm changing the locks on my mind. They don't get to live there rent-free anymore. The dawn had fully broken. The storm was over. The wreckage was behind me, and the road ahead was paved with my own decisions. I want to leave you with one final thought. A thought that has kept me going through the lawsuits, the screaming matches, and the lonely nights in that motel room. We are raised to believe that family is a sacred contract. We are told that blood is thicker than water. We are told that you must honor your father and mother, no matter the cost. But what happens when the cost is your soul? What happens when the sacred contract is actually a suicide pact where you are the only one dying? I am sitting on my porch right now. It's dusk. The sky is a bruised purple, turning into night. My dog, a rescue pit bull named Buster, who was also abandoned for being too much work, is sleeping at my feet. I have a box next to me. It's the metal box, the family fund box. For a long time, I thought I would keep these papers forever. The receipts, the acknowledgement of debt, the nasty text messages printed out. I thought I needed them as trophies. Proof that I was right. Proof that I wasn't crazy. But looking at them now, I realize they aren't trophies. They are scars. And scars are useful. They remind you where you've been, but you don't need to pick at them every day. I strike a match. I pick up the acknowledgement of debt, the piece of paper that won me the lawsuit, the paper my father signed without reading because he was too busy watching TV. I hold the flame to the corner. The paper curls. The ink blackens. I drop it into the fire pit. I watch it burn. My mother called me an orphan to hurt me. She used the word as a weapon to strip me of my history. She wanted me to feel small, alone, and unloved. But she didn't understand the true meaning of the word. To be an orphan, in the way I have become one, is to be the author of your own life. It means I don't have to carry the generational trauma of the Vance family. I don't have to inherit their vanity, their greed, or their cruelty. The buck stops with me. When I have children one day, and I will, they won't know what it feels like to be a utility. They won't know what it feels like to buy their own love. They will know that a home is a place where you are safe, not a place where you are leveraged. If you are listening to this story, and you feel a tightness in your chest because it sounds familiar, listen to me closely. If you are the one always fixing the problems. If you are the one always paying the bills. If you are the one always apologizing for things you didn't do. If you are the difficult one because you finally set a boundary, you are not crazy. You are being used. And it is okay to walk away. It is okay to change the locks. It is okay to be an orphan, if it means you finally find a family that loves you for who you are, not for what you can provide. My name is Leo. I am a builder. I am a survivor. And I am the proud owner of a life that is 100% mine. Thank you for listening to my story. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to fight for your own worth against the people who were supposed to protect it, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Not for the algorithm, but as a signal. A signal that we see each other.